is just constant emotional influence on my mind, what I can't take. So so I do. As an empath, I spend a lot of time alone. That's my solution.
I can't say that I don't. In fact, almost all the same things. Very much the I don't get out much. People try to. Matt tries to get me out a lot, actually. He's only partially succeeded. I don't really identify with. Well, anyway.
Here's the problem with something like that. Getting someone out is absolutely wonderful, and it's very important for them to get out into the world and live life that doesn't involve being surrounded by the things that make them depressed. The problem is they can't be forced to do it. It has to be a choice. It has to be something they engage in, because if they're just going out because someone's dragging them out, the chances of success to give them a positive experience are actually quite minimal. Depression is not something that is very good on an interactive level. The best you can do with most depressed people is provide them with the resources to be able to deal with the depression, but you can't do it for them. And that's where a lot of people run into hitting their head against the wall. They have these people they care deeply about. They want to help them get through this depression, and they don't understand why everything they're trying is not functionally working. And which can also have a negative.
See, I have a slightly different perspective on that. I would say this: my depression is highly informative. In the same way that touching a hot stove is highly informative, it teaches me something, an invaluable lesson. My capacity to work through my sadness and to allow those emotional processes to travel through me is really an art form. I don't stop feelings or emotions or frustration or depression or anger or anxiety from moving through me. I don't push it away and I don't hold on to it. I let it pass through me. So there are moments throughout my day where I'm in tears for a minute or 2 or 3 minutes, and then I take a deep breath and I ask myself, "Are you okay now? Do you need to continue crying?" Or can we, I have these little conversations with myself. My therapist told me it was okay. So I do it. Absolutely. It works.
My therapist said it was okay.
We as a society have made fun of those affirmation phrases that we see in pop culture, like people looking in the mirror and talking themselves up. The problem is they're actually effective. And the more
what was it, Stuart Smalley? And gosh darn it, people like me.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I did that every morning for months and months and months and felt like a fucking idiot every time I did it and laughed at myself for doing it. And that sarcasm became part of the fun. And after a while, I realized that my inner voice was like a taskmaster or a drill sergeant, and that I needed to change that inner voice. I was the inner voice. I wasn't the victim of my own inner voice, was the sort of epiphany, was that my inner voice was totally within my control, and I get to decide how that inner voice speaks to me and interacts with me. I'm lazy and I'm a daydreamer. So I need that part of myself that says it's time to do your laundry or it's time to pay your bills or whatever it is. It's important to have that aspect of my personality. But I changed my drill sergeant voice to the sound of Mr. Rogers. And now when I tell myself to get my ass out of bed in the morning, I do it using Mr. Rogers' voice and his intonation. And to me, that's so funny and absurd that it makes me laugh. And it's when I'm not speaking to myself in the kindest terms, as though I were 10 years old, it becomes very apparent to me. And so if I'm starting to get depressed or down on myself, my inner voice becomes more rude or more harsh. Then it's a perfect canary in the coal mine for me to say, oh, the drill sergeant's coming back. I need to call on Mr. Rogers. And it's a funny sort of a sarcastic way of looking at it in my own mind. Right. But the humor of it, me making fun of myself for being so silly allows me to be so silly.
Can I ask you a question?
Silliness is, yes, sir.
Why do you make fun of yourself for it? What is the catalyst in you that hears yourself saying this and you automatically want to make fun of yourself for it? Are you judging yourself?
Well, that's an excellent question. As an empath, we have the capacity to echo our own feelings. So, for example, if you say, Neil, let's go to the park and throw a Frisbee, Neil would possibly be in a position where he would say, I cannot possibly think about even getting anything positive out of going to the park and throwing a frisbee right now. But I see that my friend wants me to do it. It would make him feel better if I did it. So I'm going to ignore my feelings, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to throw a frisbee in the park, because if I see that it makes him happy, then I will be happy that he's happy, and then I will be happy. That echo chamber of emotional sort of experience can be very dangerous for an empath. So for me to objectively look at me changing, for me to change myself, I have to use humor and sarcasm in order for it to feel real to me. In order for me to be in a position where I'm allowing the critique or the critical element allows me to stay on track, so I'm not blowing smoke up my own ass, I guess.
Okay.
Because I don't know how else to put that, but it's an empath thing, in my opinion.
Oh, no, I understand. It's not an experience I'm not unaware of or have not experienced myself. No, it's a good answer to the question. And the reason I'm asking is that there's generally, and unfortunately empaths tend to sit outside of this, but there tends to be two sources of self-ridicule. One is violating one's own sense of self-identity. When we all have a sense of who we are, and when we're taking actions we don't think are within that identity, it makes us feel worse. The other source is our perception of how other people would view us if they were around for what we're doing. And that's the one that a lot of people experience, especially the more extroverted personality types, when they are mocking themselves for doing things that are actually helping themselves, but they feel like this isn't something they should have to do because the world would say that this is not the right thing to do. They actually hurt themselves for it.
That's a good point.
Now, unfortunately, empaths, and Duffy, I'm in the same boat you are, we tend to have a bit of a mixed bag. We get both of it. We know how people are going to react. We actually formulate all of our reactions, all of our behaviors become a survival behavior to avoid the static that we get from people if we give them an interaction they don't want. Because if I anger you as an empath, I'm not just watching you be angry with me, I'm feeling the anger coming back at me, and that's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So every behavior that an empath takes is to change the way people react to them, and it's not about being a nice person. And that's where a lot of people tend to.
True. You're absolutely right. Being an empath is absolutely not about being a nice person. And
No.
I absolutely agree. I have used my insight to hurt people time and time and time again. And I'll tell you a little secret. When I fucking hurt you, you don't recover quickly, because I read people like books, and I can I will tell you the thing that you most never wanted anyone to say. And I never want to do that. I never want to be that person. But as an empath, I'm always aware of my capacity to hurt. And because my capacity to heal is very real, I've learned that my capacity to do damage is also very real. It's really a matter of the intent behind the insight.
Yes.
Empath really just creates a model of the other human being in their own head. The reason that we don't hurt other people so much is because that model inside of us becomes part of us. And so we empaths intrinsically understand that we are a part of everyone else, and that everyone else is a part of us. And that if I hurt someone else, I ultimately hurt myself. And other people don't have that. Here's what, sociopaths literally don't have that concept in their head. So we have to understand that there's that difference in the way that people think and function. And being an empath does not mean being weak or being full of tears or a puddle of sadness. It really, it can be, but it can also be a very violent and very powerful damage that you can do to other human beings deeply. And and Neil and I are both empaths, and so if I like look at Neil wrong, if I like tone of any tiny little thing he's going to pick it up and he's going to feel terrible, and then I'm going to feel terrible that I made him feel terrible.
I would think that most
he made me
of
feel
my...
terrible. That's that echo thing I'm talking about.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Neil's actually not an empath, but he can emulate one very well.
Thanks.
What he is you are a simulator.
I can fake human beings.
No, but what you can do is when you look at a person, you can look at the behavior they're using, and you can project the beginning of it. You don't always, you actually run into a lot of problems understanding why people react the way they do from that point forward, but you know where they came from.
Yeah.
So you're very good at pattern analysis and behaviors.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's
Wow.
that's completely news to me.
Well, he knows me. I don't really think about it that way, but he's right. I very much am a systems type of person. Like before I take a step forward,
that would make sense.
I have everything planned. Except I try to say that I'll be wild and carefree, but I'm never wild and carefree. I just have a lot of contingency plans. And it looks like I know what I'm doing all the time, but I can remember where everything is, and I keep doing it. And you know, and I can slide right into, oh no, I had it planned this way the whole time. Welcome, you know, like.
You're just really super wicked smart. That's the bottom line. See, and I don't think of myself as smart at all. I think of myself as freakishly insightful, but I don't think of myself as particularly intelligent. I'm not stupid. But I'm not. I don't have a genius level IQ at all. I'm like right on the edge of smart people. Like I'm at the very the dumbest smart person you know. But and I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a bad way. But I'm just saying that's where I rate in the numbers. But I think the insight is weird and it scares me sometimes, and it scares other people. Insightfulness, and I think is that the empathy that I'm talking about? Am I defining myself properly in that way?
I know sometimes I have trouble dealing with video games when I play them too long, and I ended up having to make a choice which I can't go back from, and it ends up hurting someone that's not a real person that exists in a video game, and I will stop playing that video game because I cannot deal with that. So, my ability to deal with that is the same thing when I go out to deal with other people. We're having a nice casual conversation and I'm just meeting you, but to get invested into something, I will feel continually guilty. And people who know that will find me and take advantage of me. There's a person who I did a favor for. Okay, I'm just being honest with you. Last year and a half ago, 18 months ago, she still calls me for drives and calls me to, when she's out of medication, to make sure that she can get her meds. So I will go and make sure she has, you know, medication and coffee and stuff like that. Yeah, and I only worked with her for 1 month, but I can't say no now. See? So if I get involved with someone else, suddenly this could happen again, and I can't deal with that shit. One or two is enough, Anyway,
yeah,
sorry for ranting.
You can't say
that. I relate to that deeply, but I shut people down right now.
I don't really have the ability to sometimes.
Yeah, so maybe that's the difference. Like the system, so that this person broke your rule. Like your system includes this behavior, and you haven't. I mean, I'm trying to imagine myself from a systems theory perspective.
He doesn't have a contingency plan to how to address this thing.
There you go.
Because it's not like they deserve it, and it's not like they're being
Get yourself
mean.
An algorithm, brother. Get yourself an algorithm.
Well, no, but I mean, now that they found a boyfriend and everything, they can deal with that. But when they both have problems, they still come to me, and But that's not even my big thing. Like, I'm not trying to even dwell on this because it rarely happens. I'm not trying to say that it's a burden or anything.
So, Neil, I'm going to tell you something that I tell myself a lot these days.
Oh.
It's not your problem.
Yeah.
Whatever they're experiencing is up to them to solve. And while you may be able to do it for them, it's not your responsibility to do so. The only person you're currently responsible for, especially where you're experiencing a depressive state, is yourself and your own mental well-being. If you spend your energy on other people, you have nothing left for yourself. And then
you're running on empty.
Yeah. And then their problems make it your problem. Right. You basically.
And then you get into the whole thing of
I avoid answering
where you're actually
or
hurting
anything,
someone and keeping them from growing by helping them.
Yeah.
So you create dependency, which retards personal growth.
No.
When
you're not. It's not like I haven't thought of this. Don't get me wrong.
I'm not saying isn't
but
happening.
Please,
I'm just saying
this is not
a
microcosm of my situation, or it's probably a symptom of certain things. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure we could delve deep into it, but when they were in need, I helped. And when they were not in need, I put them off because I knew that they weren't going to die or anything. And it's not my, as you said, not my problem. But it is that kind of thing that it makes me reluctant to go out into the world sometimes, because it's like, oh, wow, I've made a whole whack of new people. Oh, okay, now I'm responsible for buying you all freaking coffees. And now, okay, now there's Christmas gifts.
Well, look at all the new people.
All this crap that I don't want to deal with.
You trying to share your point of view in a way to help improve the world, you automatically take it upon yourself to fix the problems in the world that you see.
Yeah, maybe.
That's the problem being smart, is you got used to thinking that you could fix everything, because sometimes you can, because you're so fucking smart. But it's a trap. It's a mental trap.
Well, you have to learn to say no. That's the main thing. It says there are things that you can do, but there are things that you should not be doing. There are other things that are more important to do, and you have to prioritize and say, I can't do that because I need to do this.
Yes,
this is more important. And Duffy is the one that is he's the friend that will tell you the facts, the truth in front of you. And that's discomforting, but I want somebody in my life to tell me you're full of crap, that you're not, because that tells me I need to change in a way that is going to be more helpful to myself and everybody else. But Duffy,
that applies to me too. That I want that too. How can I grow?
I need
How can
the
I
honesty.
be so outspoken and so fucking opinionated and not have people around me telling me when I'm wrong? Like, that's necessary. Like, it's crucial for me to have people around me who are willing to say, that doesn't make any goddamn sense, what you just said.
Yeah,
exactly. The
exactly.
matter is I'm just as fallible as anybody else. I'm just a louder mouth.
That's a
Duffy,
friend. That's a real
problem,
friend.
Duffy. The problem you have, Duffy, is that you've gotten a certain complex. In people's heads, you become the source of information. And in your own head, you've also become the expected source of information. I'm going to be guessing, without knowing you, that for the majority of your life, 80% of the time that people have come to you with a problem, you've had an answer. And that's a lowball number.
Yeah, and a good one. And it's weird for them. And it's weird for me. It's awkward.
But the problem is that perception in you and in them makes it very hard for people to tell you things like that, because they're
and here's the other thing: people think that I can see that. People become frightened of me because they're like, "Well, what else can he see?" You know what I mean?
Actually,
like I become a weird. I become.
They used to do that as a joke, where I would, as a party trick, I would sit around and they would go, "All right." A new person comes into the group, whatever, and they go, okay, well, what can you tell me about my new boyfriend? and they're right there in front of you, and I would just be half drunk or on whatever, and I would just go, because you're wearing this, because you're walking like that, because you have this, because you have that. I would just start doing that, like not even conscious half the time, and they were like, holy Jesus Christ. But and there goes, well, but
hide that.
They're scared of that,
hide
and
that.
you don't
let people know you can do that. That's bad. That's how I think about it.
Well, I mean, you're talking about.
They have a way that they act, and then you just look at it and you deal with it. And,
what were you saying, James?
Sherlock Holmes. You're Sherlock Holmes, but you're hiding your psychic abilities by trying to find references to what you already intuitively know. Because
I probably just watch too much TV. That's probably it.
Everybody wants to have some root cause about he's wearing this lapel and it means this.
Oh, you could be totally wrong.
His hat is dusty, therefore he doesn't have a girlfriend, or whatever it might be. But the intuitive is already there. You have it. You don't need any Sherlock Holmes finding the root cause of this. This I don't know match that's on the ground that's already been burnt and means something. You don't really need that, but we like to find it. We like to pretend that our intuitive nature is kind of rooted in some physical reality when it's not.
Well, then we become like so confident in ourselves because, oh my God, I'm like amazing. I can do this and I can do that. I have these amazing. And then your ego is so like unbearable that you say something wrong and or you misjudge, or you misread
You
a
jump to
situation.
conclusions.
Yeah, you get lazy and you get cocky. Your ego. I mean, the potential for my ego to get out of control is just constant. I am
I wonder if
constantly
that's a
reminding myself.
commonality here between me, Neil, you, James, and I mean, Buddy's not talking. Neither's
Well,
Chris.
trust me, he has one too.
But I mean, I know that. But I mean, we're all talking about a specific, like we're talking about root causes. We're all talking about this ability to, in one way or another, make people believe that we can read them,
Yeah.
either from where they've been or where they're going. But we're talking around. Like James said, psychic ability. I've always taken it. And he said the word intuitive. I've always preferred the basically analysis. I'm always very good at analyzing people, but I'm not analyzing the way they're dressing. I'm analyzing the way they're acting, the way they respond specifically to things, their emotional reactions to phrases. Those tell me a lot.
Yeah.
Those.
Yeah.
When it comes
The
down
things
to
left unsaid.
yes.
The twitch in your eye after you make that last statement. It's all
Yes.
very relevant.
The little smile you get.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing, is we're all talking about root causes, but I mean, we don't actually know at a fundamental level if this is this a sensory issue? Is this a brain processing information on an intuitive level issue? Are we just reading patterns, or is it something we can't even conceive of right now? Is this maybe this is an interconnectedness of everything issue? You know, maybe I'm just reading the vibes going down. What was
the
that, Chris?
polygraph work, the polygraph work of Cleve Baxter. I mean, I'm assuming everyone's kind of heard of that.
I'd love to hear a little bit more because I haven't.
Well, you know, I mean, it was kind of big news in the 70s, and then it was sort of debunked. There was a Mythbusters about it. And from what I remember, they even tried the same test that one of his famous tests, where they thought about burning a plant that was connected to a polygraph. And they did see a response, even on Mythbusters, when they thought about burning it. So this is like a weird thing that Cleve Baxter discovered. He was, you know, we don't understand how a polygraph machine works. It's called galvanic skin response. It's supposed to measure sweat in the skin. But Cleve Baxter found when he said when he had his polygraph connected to a plant that was in the same room as a person, he was a lie detector expert. He said he got better readings from the data that was coming from the plant in a room with a person to tell whether or not they were lying than he did if it was connected to that person. I'm just throwing that out there, you know.
That's very interesting.
That would
because,
follow along with my theory.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, the inventor of the lie detector test was the guy who created Wonder Woman, for God's sakes, and you know, they found out that it wasn't really reliable for criminal investigations or something like that. Of course, it means something, and I think it's really interesting, Chris, that thank God you're bringing some of your analysis and intellect into this, because it's really, really needed. That, you know, what works and what doesn't work, and like I say, the question is, can you find a root cause? Because people are pretty much like, there's like a 3 or 4 main kind of people, and we kind of just, it's not we can analyze and catalog people, but the responses are going to be fairly predictable, which makes your field of study a lot easier. But we are, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we're spiritual and interconnected together, all together, and we know what's going on. It's just that we like to I don't know, play games with ourselves in some form or way or another, and we learn spiritual lessons through that methodology. But the more and more I study into what is the cosmos, what is the physical reality, the more and more I'm finding that we're not going to find sources like we think. Things are not solid. Things are not the way that we categorize them or want to believe that they exist. They're not. There's no one thing that you can grab a hold and say, this is real. It doesn't work that way. It's more like it's all just on paper, and we can look at these things and see how they work, but we can't really tell the root causes of them because they aren't physical.
Because ideas don't exist outside of context, and experience doesn't exist outside of context. I think that it's both. You have to have both your, you know, do you guys You guys ever fuck with the Briggs-Myers test?
Yes, part of my job.
I don't know
All
what
right.
that
So,
means.
can you tell me what type I am just by talking to me?
Oh, I'm not that good, but let me take a crack at it. 1 second. You're an I, but you're close to an E. You're an intuitive. I'm not going there.
I am very I.
I think you might be very similar to me. I think you may be close to a TF. You might be actually into the bridge, but you're closer just a little bit. Well, you're probably about 10% into the feeling more than the thinking.
INFJ. I am very, very, very INFJ.
Okay, so
like when I sat down and talked with my therapist about what an INFJ was, I went with a list and said, look, these are the problems that I have, and half of the problems that I had on my list were attributable to the fact that my base personality type. So, like this is factory model. Like these are not aftermarket behavior.
So here's a question: did you ever find your Myers-Briggs personality profile change once you started being more honest about your answers? Because when I was younger, everyone thought I was an INFP. Okay,
not gentle.
that was my
nurturing.
survival behavior. My survival behaviors, in order to be able to deal with the world, presented as an INFP. But when I actually had a day where I was just being honest with myself and with the test, I came out as an ENTJ.
That's interesting. I took the test a long time ago, years and years ago, before I really knew what it was, just out of curiosity. And then I set the results aside. And then when I decided I wanted to start seeing a therapist, I pulled the results out and started looking at them.
Yep.
And that was so I took the test again, and I got the same results again. And what I learned was with the INFJ that like I'm very social, and I'm articulate, and I'm I can be the life of the party or whatever. I have this jovial kind of charming element to my personality, but it's a front. It's completely it's a front. It's that I'm not. I'm definitely an introvert, and it took me a long time to sort of embrace the idea that you are absolutely an introvert. And it was because I like people and I like being around people. But
me too.
But people drain me. They drain me.
Yes, but I could also sit in my room and read literally the encyclopedia and play with Legos, and I did that all day until it was nighttime.
Be completely happy. I'm an only child as well, and so I mean, not that you are, but I am, and that's why I had
a sister, so not exactly something to play Lego with.
I forget what type I am, but I'm one of those rare types that Putin is, if that tells you what that is.
Putin is cheese and gravy.
So, do you know what I would love to see, by the way, talking about the Myers-Briggs? I would love to see everyone partaking in the conversation, go off later, take the test, and come back with it, and everyone else guess at what everyone else is going to be. Because I think Neil is an ESTJ.
Efficient, outgoing, analytical, systematic, dependable, realistic, likes to run the show and get things done in an orderly fashion. Do you think that's who I am?
It sounds like you.
Wow. I would say that I was I don't know, crazy, flighty, weird person. But okay.
You're not an Aquarian. That's me.
Oh, right. I'm a Libra. I'm a very balanced, crazy person.
I have a question for you, Neil. What did you name the show?
What I name the show? A Way Through.
All right. So what were you envisioning when you said that? A way through what?
Well, I didn't want to say something that was demeaning, but also something that, because at the moment I don't want anyone to see the words depression on the friggin' thing there. So I didn't want that. That's all I was thinking, was something that would be open and thoughtful, but also encouraging others to talk about their own experiences. Well, I guess that's what I was aiming for. I don't know if that worked, but
no, it's fantastic. Because I mean, what we started with was a depressive talk, but we've actually ended up with a who we are as people.
Well, I guess that's what it boils down to. But I guess there's something. I'm going to share the screen, I guess. I don't know if this will actually work. It should. That one. Yeah, good. Now, I think I'm sharing the right screen. Oh. Do you guys see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So, me and Chris have been playing a game called Warframe. Well, and Matt, I guess. But and I'm not going to go through a bunch of crap about that. Obviously, we like it and it's fun. But there's a part where a lot of it has to do with the duality of being, and that you're questioning whether or not you're seeing things or you're sane, and whether or not the things in other dimensions are actually real or you're imagining them. And so with all of that kind of idea behind it, there's the question on whether or not you can even, what is your shadow? And then they started talking about Carl Jung's shadow and what that means. I figured, since there's this little piece here that is very interesting, and I don't think it's actually like Max Derritt is the guy who runs this channel, but it's basically a just nice little talk. It's only a few minutes long, but I wanted to sort of just get to the little part that he was talking about. Might be better if I just grabbed it from the other video because it was very relevant, but still I'm going to, because it certainly wasn't 6 minutes long. See if I can do this. Start reloading. All right. I'm just going to play it so you can hear it. I try not to make it too loud.
Accepts that human beings is the shadow. 3 chapters. The most accessible of the inner archetypes is the shadow. It is easy to access once one accepts that human beings are imperfect and can have negative qualities. All of those contents about oneself that one doesn't like fall into the shadow. The shadow occupies the unconscious realm of our psyche. While not all unconscious contents are shadow contents, like positive memories one might recall, most remain unconscious because they are difficult to integrate into one's conscious being. I briefly referenced something in the last video that I said would be left for Chapter 4, and I still intend to leave the majority of that discussion for Chapter 4, but it's relevant to bring up again. In order for the ego to grow in consciousness, it needs to integrate unconscious contents and bring them under its control. This integration is called the confrontation with the shadow. In successful cases, a human being will recognize a certain negative quality about themselves and either destroy that quality or control it so that the quality doesn't negatively impact their lives. In unsuccessful cases, 2 things might happen. Like I said in regards to complexes in the last video, the shadow has the potential to subsume the ego and bring it under its control. The person then becomes an avatar for the shadow and will do its evil bidding. A good example of the shadow possessing the ego occurs in the film Apocalypse Now. The character of Colonel Kurtz, the main antagonist of the film, goes from being a decorated officer in the U.S. Army to a man that will decapitate those who displease him. For more information on how Colonel Kurtz
Anyway, I don't think we need to go any further than that. That was, if you guys want to, that's the name of it right there. Jordan Peterson's Nightmare. I have no idea why it's Jordan Peterson's Nightmare, because I was watching this for the perspective of a game where you have to actually encounter the shadow. But I came across this, and I mentioned it to Chris, and Chris then said, I love Carl Jung. And so I figured this was a good thing to hopefully open some discussion up on, or at least hopefully it was helpful.
I'm pretty sure I did, but anyway.
What? Sorry.
Yeah, your mic broke up pretty bad there.
Oh,
Chris.
sorry. Yeah, I'm not that into Carl Jung really.
Oh.
Maybe it was a bad line at the time when we were talking.
Oh, no, actually, I think now that I think about it, was another friend of mine who said they love Carl Jung. But you did say that you like psychology. I knew that much.
Oh, that's
no. I mean, hey, I only talked to a few people, so it's, how often would I be talking about this to people? Like, there's only Makes it easy if you only have a couple people you talk to. It's either you or you. That's it.
It's very interesting to me that seeing how people cope with all their characteristics, and I thought maybe this show was going to be about how you cope with depression. You know, the one thing that I know practically nothing about. You know, I know something about how depression in other people affects me, but I don't experience this, and it's well, it's interesting. It's just one part of the whole.
Well,
Thank
I can
you.
tell you what it feels like because this medication actually it's kind of odd. I feel separated from myself slightly. Like instead of basically sitting there and wanting to listen to sad songs and get depressed and drink liquor or something and whatever, not that I've ever done that, but with Matt, but one of the things though is coming to basically in this medication, I sort of feel like I'm here and I'm watching half of myself go down a dark hole. So I can recognize my feelings. Like I can tell that I'm doing sad smiles. I can tell that I'm feeling unmotivated and I can watch it happen. It doesn't change the fact that it's happening though. Like I'm like, wow, I can articulate this feeling. This is really nice. Wow.
You're a step removed from it.
It's odd, yes. It's like, but that's what I guess these things do. They're trying to push me away from that feeling, so to speak. But one of the reasons this happened is because I'm having a change of medication. They're increasing dosages and stuff like that to try to accommodate. And things have been kind of difficult because of the quarantine stuff. So things have been a little slow going. But anyway, I didn't want people to be totally worried and think that things are like, astronomical. I wouldn't be talking to you if they were, like that, I guess.
Well, I know nothing about coping mechanisms for this particular thing. The only thing that I know about depression is due to me and my lady having a psychic connection, and that my father's energy was kind of like in me at the time. And it was making me feel depressed. Any foreign energy is going to do that. But I mean, it got to the point where I feel like I wanted to die, and it wasn't my energy. But my lady was healing me, and she's bipolar, so she knows depression well. And so I told her, I asked her, I says, this energy, what would you on a scale of 1 to 10 tell me what this was for you? And she said it was a 4. And I wanted to die. So I don't have any idea about how anything goes on that scale for anybody else and how they possibly could cope with it.
Well, okay, so you started that statement with you don't know coping mechanisms, but the main thing is you're describing coping mechanism. You're framing the world that you live in terms of energy and in terms of connections, and being able to find things that provide you a basis to have understanding. That's the first level.
Powerful sense making.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're trying to make sense of the world, because depression is an automatic sense that nothing makes sense. This is pointless. Why am I doing this? So the truth is, there's no one set of effective coping mechanisms. It's going to be a universal for everyone. Everyone has different coping mechanisms. Neil's coping mechanism involves a lot of research into the EU. My coping mechanism tends to be either playing violent video games and blowing shit up, or going out to my backyard and shooting arrows down my archery range. Whatever works. The truth is, there's a lot of maladaptive coping out there because people are not. Drinking is a very good example of maladaptive coping. It actually, because alcohol is such a heavy depressant, it actually makes the situation worse, not better. But in the moment that you're drinking, you feel better. Certain types of drugs are maladaptive. Copious amounts of meaningless sex. I mean, it sounds great on paper, and of course, there's lots of pop culture jokes about it. But the truth is, it's not healthy because you're not addressing any of the issues you're dealing with. And the only true coping mechanism is the one that actually works for you, and it's one that you have to be honest with yourself about. Like, are you doing what you're doing because you're trying to make yourself feel better right now, or are you trying to survive this moment so you can get to the next moment? If it's working and it's not causing you to slip deeper into depression, it's an effective coping mechanism. And making yourself feel bad about a coping mechanism that works and doesn't hurt anyone else is actually counterproductive. Because a lot of people, guys especially, women too, like everyone, we all have this cultural statement saying this is what a coping mechanism is supposed to look like. If you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong and you deserve to be depressed. Well, it's not true.
Actually,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that is
wrong.
this is something that I've had to. The most important thing is awareness of it. For me, like, you got to start with knowing it's happening and recognizing when it's happening. And I didn't until about 2 weeks ago when I realized what was going on, and I talked to Duffy there, and it was like, wow, I didn't realize how bad I was. And well, but that's the thing. As soon as I recognized it, I took effort to go in the other direction. It doesn't mean that it's a quick turnaround and you can just suddenly clap your hands together and start singing happy songs. But you go out and visit people, and then you tell them, and you go to someone else and you tell them, and you don't hide it or anything. But you're also you're not alone. You have people around, and that way it's real.
Yep.
You're not hiding it somewhere, you know. And that's another thing. You try to hide it. You try to, like, and I have a real habit of hiding it late at night. I'm just in the middle of the night. I'll go out for a drive. There's no one around. I can listen to whatever music I want. But if I notice that the songs I want to listen to are all depressive, I got to take a moment and think about this. Maybe I'm just working through something, but things are a little bit different now, where I'm basically more aware of it. That's good because you can basically see it. But
and that awareness is really important. That right there. So the finding a coping mechanism that works for you, then accepting the coping mechanism and being aware of when you're using a good coping mechanism versus a maladaptive one are critical components to the start of dealing with depression. Number two, and it probably should be number one, but it takes a long time for people to really accept this. You have to accept that this will change.
yes,
The depression you're feeling, the negativity you're feeling, this darkness of the world wrapping you up and choking you is not forever. Because the people that truly believe that this will not change hold on to it. They keep it. They make sure it doesn't go away because it's the only thing that makes sense, because this is the world they've
Right.
lived in. But if you want...
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
yes,
Yes. But if you can accept that everything changes, including the bad stuff, then you have a way to find your way out of this. You accept that there is a path out, and you can start looking for it.
There's another mechanism that I employ
stopping caring
a lot,
about
and I don't.
food. That's another thing. I stopped caring about food. Like, when I'm happy, I'm like,
Yeah, that's
oh, we
bad.
should have this. And when I'm like this right now, I mean, all I've had today was 2 pieces of pizza and I had them in the middle of the night, and they were bought 2 days ago, and I don't care. You know, like, and I
As long
shouldn't
as
be
they're
like,
not poisonous.
or as long as they're not poisonous. You're right. I'm at least eating, but I normally would not do that. I would like, oh God, throw that out, get something, whatever. But I, it's just not in me to do. And he knows how bad it can get. You can become so frazzled, I can't even. I mean, I don't think I could call him. He would have to, like, he would have to take me places. Like, I mean, I could be a real mess. Now I'm happy I'm not that, but I can tell that there's a feeling, there's a hole right there. Except the difference is now it's sort of like, oh, it's a really big hole, and look, I'm falling into it. Damn, like, that's nice, I guess.
Hey, Abyssal, welcome.
Yeah. But I mean, I do know, though, it will change. I know that I'm going through efforts. I'm not critical in the sense that there's a I have no money. I'm not just like lying, but I know where to get help now, hopefully. And, if I really need certain help, like I have my friend here who will literally go, like wrote an email to someone saying, here's the number of my friend, he'll handle everything. And that was it. Like, and then I will talk to him, and then he will make my appointments and all that shit. That's how bad I was. I couldn't even do that.
But it lasted until you were able to deal with it on your own.
Yeah.
And that's the point. Sometimes you just have to, find that mechanism that works and let it work. Once you'll find things getting better. As long as you're not trying to actively.
And I have been injured, by the way. That's what started this whole thing. It's a lot of anxiety, and I get an inability to walk. So.
Now, Duffy, you were starting to say something a minute ago. What was that?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, so, I mean, I think that one of the things that is possible that is occurring, at least for me, was what I began to understand was an existential crisis. So for me, it was really a matter of I don't have hope for this. I don't have hope for my country. I don't have hope for my planet. I don't have hope for my people. I don't have hope for myself. And I left my keys in the house and I just locked the door. Like, that is literally that moment where I realized that I locked myself out of my house on my way to a doctor's appointment. I just literally collapsed. There was a moment in time where I just simply I felt I had nothing left to stand on. And so for me, some of the things that basic things, I mean, I talked about the inner voice. I think that was an important thing, but part of it was just simple daily practice, like having a thing that I did every day that mattered. Finding no matter whatever I was experiencing or going through, no matter how horrible it seemed, my mental rule was to say, there's something to be gained from this. There's a baby in this bathwater somewhere. There's a nugget in this gold mine. There's a thing in this terrible situation that I'm supposed to be learning. There's a brass ring I need to find before I get to the next level of my video game. There's this idea of hope in a thing that would be good, even though I see nothing good, that there is this thing I'm missing. And this sort of mindset was sort of a little video game I played with myself when I was feeling completely hopeless. Like, I think I'm missing something. I'm missing the lesson. I'm missing the nugget of truth here. And that knowledge gave me hope in the moments where I felt, even though I didn't always find that nugget, the idea that nugget existed, and planting that thought in my mind over and over again, no matter how hopeless I felt, no matter how powerless I felt, there's this thing I don't see yet. There's another thing around the corner that'll make this make sense. And having that in my head carried me through a lot of times when it wasn't always true, and I couldn't always prove it. But often enough, that idea was reinforced that it allowed me to go forward. And it really was the foundation of this idea that my emotional state is like a wave, and I'm like a willow tree. I'm not an oak. An oak breaks in the windstorm. A willow tree bends, and I want to be like the willow tree and not break but bend. And so my idea conceptually is that when depression hits, or anxiety hits, or just existential dread is all around me, I think in terms of, okay, I'm having a storm right now, or even more visceral. Oh, right now I'm taking a shit. It's important that I evacuate these bowels. I have to. This is an important part of my process. Not that, oh my God, I'm depressed again. What do I do about it? But this is a process that I'm going through. This is something I'm experiencing. So when I watched a man be murdered on national television the other day,
what?
I felt that really, really. Name was James Floyd. It was a snuff film. You should have seen it. It was great.
What?
When I experienced. Yeah, we had a guy here in America that was killed by the police on national television the other day, and murdered on TV. And so when that happened, all 9 minutes of it filmed on television and broadcast all throughout the United States and all around the world. That impacted me extremely deeply, and I felt it overwhelmingly for days. And then I got better, and then I'm fine. I cope with it. I'm hardened to that reality now. And that process is functional. For me, the process is not to avoid the pain or to avoid the horror reality of a snuff film on TV. I experience that fully and completely and allow myself to have a full experience of that moment so that I can then cope with it. And so what I guess what I'm saying is that as these practices have become easier for me to employ, and so I become overwhelmingly devastated to the point where I can't function for a period of time. But that period of time, so that if that's depression, my depression hasn't subsided. I've just learned what to do about it and what to do with it when it happens, as opposed to, oh my God, I'm depressed, I'm spiraling into a hole which I will never recover from. I realize now that this is an experience that I'm having. It's important that I process it completely and get it and allow it to pass through me so that I can continue to move on. It's the idea that there is hope after devastation, which I think is what you were kind of talking about.
Yeah, well, not only hope after devastation, but also not allowing negativity to become a permanent resident in your head. There's a mindset that I've discovered with a lot, especially in my line of work, with a lot of people who suffer from bad life circumstances, that it becomes a pattern for them, and they cannot believe that positivity will happen. So everything that they experience is now filtered through a negative filter. Everything. It doesn't matter how innocent or innocuous or not actually negative it was. There's always negativity. They're the people who can find the dark cloud around any silver lining. Okay.
That's a safety mechanism, by the way.
Because
everything is evil, but I don't have to be horrified by the fact.
You can't be disappointed if you already expected the worst to happen.
That's right.
It becomes a self-confirmed habit. So
yeah.
What I'm finding really interesting that Duffy's talking about, he has a squeaky toy at the end of the at the end of the rainbow. So for me, it's like.
Exactly.
Which is really well, yeah. I mean, I think that's the best coping mechanism I've ever seen. It goes through the thing that human beings are processors of information. At least that's how I understand it for myself. And that when you go through you're going through the fire, and we're all. That's kind of like the going through the fire is a state of consciousness, and you're going from one end to the other, and it's not comfortable. Going through fire is just not fun, but it's just part of what we do. And some people sit down in the middle of the fire and cry because they're not at the other end of it yet. And that's the one thing you can't do. You have to always go forward. But I find it very interesting that the kind of the thing to get out of the fire is to know that it's going to end. That there's a squeaky toy at the end, and you can ignore the fire until you get to that squeaky toy, like all the dogs
well, we say
do.
fire, but we have another concept here that we can employ, which I think is more useful. It's the annealing process. That fire is not to be avoided, and it's not to be retained. Allow it to pass through you. An annealing process, and in not pushing away and not holding on to the fire becomes stronger, which is the annealing process. And that is something that's a very functional concept. And yeah, that squeaky toy may or may not exist in reality, but I'll be goddamned if I'm going to get to the end of the rainbow and I'm not going to either find a squeaky toy or make one. I mean, I am in fact creating the squeaky toy as much as I am discovering it. And I think that's an important thing, that it doesn't that distinction is largely irrelevant is, I think, a really relevant point, because it doesn't matter if the squeaky toy is real or not, or if I actually find her, if I don't. The point is that I get to the end of the rainbow. I mean, I think to make your analogy.
See, we all have those coping mechanisms that work for us. For me, the only thing that's really ever worked for me is two things. The very phrase, shit happens, what the hell? That's it. Shit happens. I can't control that. But the other aspect of my coping is I am absolutely responsible for my reality. So if there's something part of my reality that is not working, I don't like, if it's making me feel like crap, I am responsible for dealing with it and making it no longer affect me. I never have ever given up my own sense of responsibility for myself. And that's probably been the one source of strength that's gotten me through wave after wave of depression, of horror, of absolute despondency, because I've had just as many up points. I've had just as many wonderful things. And when I can remember that shit happens, what the hell, I can take responsibility for myself.
Yeah, and the thing it is that for me is that the people avoid the fire or avoid the thing, and you're never going to be able to do that forever. It's going to come up on you, and it's going to consume you, and then to focus on it, how crappy it makes you feel, is the surest way to make it even more intense than it needs to be. You got to be like that dog that just goes, I'm going to get that squeaky toy no matter what, and just run through it as fast as you can, the process, and to get to the other end of it. Get away from the fire.
Unfortunately, we're like squeaky toy. What a concept. We get lost in the concept and forget the action, I think. You're absolutely right, James.
Well, that was much needed, I think, and I do know that we have some stuff to talk about to get together for. I'll be moving in the next there. After that, I'll be on a hard line, and we won't be having these issues where I drop off occasionally and stuff. So, yes, we have some work to do and plans to make.
We have amazing potential, you guys. This is just sort of like relationship building and getting to know each other stuff, which I think is crucial. Because the fact of the matter is that this is how history is made. People getting together and iron sharpening iron, and men supporting each other, women getting together, supporting each other with the men, and that sort of the diversity. Each is a facet, and then we make a crystalline form. And once we form that crystalline form in our relationship with each other, those connections, we're fucking powerful.
Line one of the cars.
And
doesn't matter.
It's exciting. That's why it's hard, and that's why it's challenging, and that's why it's not a guarantee that we can be successful in the electric view, because it's hard, and there are forces pushing against it because of the potential for it to be a force for change. So I think
Plus, the world does feel a little bit at odds, and with all the struggles that we are going through, sometimes feels very hard to just wanting to. I mean, it makes it hard to reach out whether or not you're going to get your hand bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a guy can only. I mean, my empathy tells me that Rick is feeling really bad right now, right?
Oh.
Like that, I made Rick feel bad, and so I have to deal with that. Like that's if the electric view goes forward, it's because Duffy and Rick figure out a way to co-partner in the process. Like that has to happen. Or maybe it doesn't happen. The reality is these are all issues that have to be played out because they are real and people are watching and they are learning from us the power of the human capacity to learn and live and love and function. I mean, I think we have our society is really corroding at its foundations. And so I think it's completely reasonable for us to have sort of foundational conversations that reinforce our foundations against some amazingly turning tides. So even though I guess we're not talking about electric universe theory, we're really talking about the foundations of what makes this program and our capacity to have these conversations possible. If we don't have sort of basic knowledge that you guys are bringing to the table and sharing with us here, then I don't see how we survive in the turbulent world we live in, because there is a constant attack.
I wanted to make sure there was a feeling that we're, or at least that was an effort to actually talk about something, especially a difficult subject, which I'm not. I mean, it seemed wrong to avoid and make a stigma of the one thing that I'm, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having diabetes any more than it's wrong than having this happen to your brain. And there's good reasons. I mean, I have been in pain constantly for literally an entire year. So, and it's getting better, but it's not gone. And there is a lot of, and that's going to have an effect. I mean, you not being able to walk around as much is going to have an effect, and you ignore it. You think it's not getting to you, but it does.
Yeah, your honesty is strength, Neil.
Yeah.
your willingness to sort of reveal your humanity is a great strength, not only for you but for others who identify with your experience, and your willingness to be human and not present yourself as otherwise allows us, the rest of us, to be well. So it's a
I don't want to be
it
too
makes you
so
very
polished, and that people feel that I don't know. There's sort of a humanity and a sort of a realness about not necessarily trying to make everything commercial. Keep trying to make it better, but sometimes money can just corrupt, and I don't need that. We have much bigger fish to fry than that, I think. But
no. When
That's
people
very
tune in
cool.
and listen to the Electric View, they're listening to a real human being with real heart and a real mind and real opinions and real problems and real conflicts, and those things are all very real. And the truth of the matter is the electric universe is in conflict with itself.
yeah,
There are opposing forces and factions that are tearing us down from within. It's not just the mainstream that's opposing us.
no, and
So we
for
have
almost no reason sometimes, But I understand some good. I understand some good points. Like I like it when there's a gentleman like that. There's one guy who totally doesn't believe any of the ancient technology stuff, but he's a Thunderbolt guy that I've talked to for a long time. And I don't want to name his name; it doesn't matter. But the fact is he'll still talk about it, even though it can be say no, blah, 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 blah. Here's the reasoning behind it. He'll at least give you his reasoning, and he'll try to make you think differently with actual intelligent debate. And that to me is, even though you completely disagree on a subject, you can still understand that this is probably the way the world was, and we have much more in common than we have separate. And people have to recognize
Neil,
that.
did you see the critique video on Gareth's work?
I heard there was one only today, just moments before the show started.
So the guy was incredibly sarcastic and condescending and just a jerk, a real jerk. And of course, to me, Gareth is like, the man. Like, I just think Gareth is just doing such great work, and I have literally nothing but positive things to think and say about him. So to listen to this guy be critical of Gareth was like, I mean, I wanted to, reach through the fucking TV and strangle him, frankly, but it came down to the reality that this guy's just being snarky and nasty, and this is what we're going to face.
But you see that.
So here's the bottom line. I got to say this really quick. If we are telling the truth, and I'm not even suggesting that we are, but if we are telling the truth, and if the electric universe is really the truth and the way, we got to take that shit seriously, and we got to realize that there is going to be waves and waves and waves of people who are going to try to shut us down, shut us up, turn us off, discredit us, think of anything they can say or do to get this word from not getting out. And so, the kinds of attacks, we're going to have to be bolstered against them. We're going to have to be prepared emotionally and intellectually to deal with the fact that we're going to have assholes trying to attack us all the time. And the more truths we tell, and the more the word gets out, and the more popular we become, the more that that resistance is going to be felt. So we have to be in a position where we realize that if and when we go through with the electric review, we're going to continue to we're going to need these social skills and these team building skills more and more and more, and we're going to have to learn to trust each other. We're going to have to learn to respect each other, and we're going to have to learn to appreciate each other even more than we